the assessed value of your business or your apartment or anything of that nature, anything that's not homesteaded, can only go up at 10% per year. This doesn't affect millage rates. This doesn't affect anything of that nature. It's purely the assessed value. The idea was to protect business owners, to protect renters from property booms and spikes, forcing them to have to lose their businesses, lay off employees, or move farther out of the city or move out of their homes. This affects everyone in the state of Florida. Over the past 10 years, we have accrued as a state a differential of about $83.4 billion between the assessed taxable value of these properties and the just market value of them now, to where that would translate to about an $800 million tax burden increase overnight should Amendment 2 fail.
This episode brought to you by Suites at Madison. Meeting and conference rooms for rent by the hour, week, month, or year. Suites at Madison, where business gets done. Check them out at www.downtowntampaoffice.com. Now, on to the show.
You are listening to the Invest Florida Real Estate Show, covering topics in lending, buy and sell strategies, property management, hot markets, and tips and tools to guide you along the way on your path to real estate success. You want Florida investment real estate talk? You have come to the right place. And now, our hosts, Eric Odom and Steven Silverman.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Invest Florida Real Estate Show. This is your co-host, Eric Odom, along with Steven Silverman. Steven, it's that time of the year.
Eric, it's sleepy time. I'd rather be out like selling properties and doing things but it's budget time now.
Budget time is the fourth quarter. We get everything together. Of course, it also coincides with the time that the ad valorem tax statements come in. That is usually the largest line item after a mortgage in terms of actually expenses. I mean, property tax is actually expense. So we wait for that to come out, and then we're able to more accurately project what the next year is going to look like. And so we do all of our budgeting for our properties, and we're in the process of doing analysis right now on that and collecting the ad valorems and seeing what in Spanish, you call it the doloroso, the painful one. So we've got the painful.
Well, if you think it's painful now, our next guest is going to make it more interesting because it'll certainly be a lot more painful next year.
Yeah, there's an amendment on the ballot that we're going to be talking about that's going to be very important to everybody in the state. And hopefully you'll stick around and listen to that. Wanted to first give a shout out to Chrissy Luna. She went on to iTunes and gave us a review. Chrissy Luna says, I won't start my day without it. Keeps information objective and concise. Great guests. Keep them coming. Chrissy Luna, thank you so much for taking the time to leave us a review. For those of you that have not done so, we really would appreciate you to do it. It's great for us because potential guests, when they're looking at how to invest their time, they want to make sure that if they're going to come on our show, that there's actually going to be meaningful for them and there are actually people listening. And you guys with those reviews help us a great deal. So Chrissy Luna, thank you so much. And anybody else that has not done so, we would appreciate you either going on to iTunes or onto the Google App Store to Google Play Store to give us a review there. Steven, we got anything else going on?
That sounded like a question, Eric.
No, it was a question. I'm trying to figure out if you have any other housekeeping items that we need to talk about before we roll into our guest.
I'm interested to get rolling on the show because I want to hear about this. So let's go right to it. Today we have with us Jacob Gill. It's election season, and Jacob is the regional director for Everybody is for Two for the Gulf Coast of Florida. Jacob has been involved in Hillsborough County campaigns over the last 5 years, doing elections and legislative work. He is a transplant from Nevada, but Tampa won his heart. He graduated from USF. Jacob, welcome to the Invest Florida Show.
Thank you guys very much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Hey, Jacob, we didn't realize that you went to USF, so you're really a hometown boy now.
Yeah, I'm a proud bull. When I first came here, I had never crossed my mind that I ended up staying in Florida. But after spending my 3.5 years in school here, the opportunity, the climate, the people, everything about this place just won me over. There's no place more affordable. There's no place that has more to do. There's just no better place to live in my mind than this part of Florida.
And look, we didn't have to pay him for that.
Well, it's it's kind of interesting. Well, it's election season, right? So this is a very topical item, very relevant right now because of what's going on. And you guys are not the only amendment about property taxes on the ballot this November, correct?
That is correct.
So Jacob, maybe you can just tell us what is Amendment 2?
All right. So for the past 10 years in the state of Florida, we have had a 10% cap on assessed value increases on non-homestead properties. So that basically means the assessed value of your business or your apartment or anything of that nature, anything that's not homesteaded, can only go up at 10% per year. This doesn't affect millage rates. This doesn't affect anything of that nature. It's purely the assessed value. The idea was to protect business owners, to protect renters from property booms and spikes, forcing them to have to lose their businesses, lay off employees, or move farther out of the city or move out of their homes. This affects everyone in the state of Florida, from the family trying to get by in the working class to the people out there trying to get their second homes or buy land. It is devastating should this go away.
Yes. So you've really got, the Amendment 1 we're not going to talk about.
That is completely different. Amendment 1 deals with...
Well, but maybe there's such confusion this year.
Well, that's part of the issue.
There's 12 amendments, I believe, and we've got a few. Maybe you can just tell people what property tax is, although what Amendment 1 is and why it shouldn't be confused with what you're doing.
The biggest key difference is that Amendment 1 deals with homesteaded properties, and it increases an existing exemption for homesteaded properties to increase savings for certain particular homeowners. Whereas Amendment 2 focuses on non-homestead properties, which is literally everything in the state that is not given some other kind of special status by the state.
Yeah. Amendment 1 has such a limited amount of effect on the number of households throughout the state. Amendment 2 is what you're working on, and we're going to say this 100 times to make sure that people understand what Amendment 2 has a critical effect on probably the most vulnerable classes in our state.
Yes, that is very much why I got involved when I first heard about this. Housing is incredibly important. As a transplant here, I didn't have any means to settle down, buy a home, get any property of my own. So I was a renter. I was a student. I still am. I love renting in the city. It's part of what makes Tampa so enjoyable for me. And these protections on property are what help make that more affordable. And for young professionals just starting out their careers, and for working families struggling to get by, a $50 increase in your rent, $100 increase in your rent on top of the increases in rent that are already happening due to taxes could be catastrophic. You could have to move. You could have to uproot your family. You might have to move farther away from your place of learning or work.
Well, actually, that's worth talking about, because there's an increase in taxation. There's double taxation, because in certain properties, like commercial properties, you're paying sales tax on the leases.
Yeah, I mean, we really don't have a widespread income tax for corporations in the state. It's what you're primarily getting hit on as a corporate is you're getting hit on sales tax on leases, and then you're getting hit with property taxes. Whether you're a tenant or you're an owner, it doesn't really matter. Those property taxes get passed through in the form of CAM or whatever. But really, the ones with the property taxes are getting hit, all the non-homesteaded, which are by and large, the majority of that is coming from apartment dwellers.
Yes. Right now, over the past 10 years, we have accrued as a state a differential of about $83.4 billion between the assessed taxable value of these properties and the just market value of them now, to where that would translate to about an $800 million tax burden increase overnight should Amendment 2 fail. And of that $800 million, 61% of that is felt by residential properties. So that's manufactured housing, that's apartments, that's rental homes, that is where people live. Then the next hardest hit will be where they work. The next 29% of that differential of tax savings is on commercial businesses, to where if you raise the cost of doing business while at the same time raising the cost of living, that doesn't lead to a pretty picture for anyone involved.
Yeah. So let's take a look at what that means. Let's talk about the Walgreens store. Well, first, let's take a look at the apartment. Person lives 2 blocks away from Walgreens, and they're renting an apartment, and they're, I don't know what the numbers would be, but per apartment in Tampa. Let's throw out a number. If it's a $30 to $35 a month increase in the rent. Because that's going to get passed through. The owners of these apartments are not going to eat that difference. They're just not. It gets passed up through because everybody is getting taxed the same. Everybody's getting this increase. And so it's going to get passed through to the tenants.
And on that note, I actually have met several landlords who really, really do not want to raise their rent on their tenants. They can't do it. Tenants would have to move, but there's reaching a point where they have no choice.
Yeah, it's already a situation in Miami-Dade. I believe it's one of the 3 most expensive apartment cities by comparison to what the average household income is in the country. So you're going to add an additional $35 a month or whatever that number is. I'm throwing that out. Just,
And on the note of Miami-Dade is probably the hardest hit county should this go away. Right now, there's about $1,000 per property in tax dollars that is being saved right now. That would immediately increase.
Okay, so immediately increase because that cap's going.
If that cap goes away, if Amendment 2 fails, it's immediately an $1,000 increase on average for non-homestead property in Miami-Dade.
So let's go back and just finish this example here. The person lives a few blocks away from Walgreens and they need drugs, some prescription they use every single month. Walgreens is also going to be one of those retailers that is impacted by the increase in property tax. So you've got a situation now where the apartment dweller is not only paying an increase in their property tax as a result of for their apartment, they're also paying in pass-throughs when they walk in and buy their prescription drugs or their groceries or anything else that they're going into their restaurant. All that is going to get passed through. So you're going to see an across-the-board increase in the state of people paying this increased tax burden. And let's be clear. Businesses are already paying a fairly substantive piece, and non-homesteaded properties are already paying a fairly substantive piece of the tax pool, the property tax pool. And the cap that was put on, what did you say that it was, Jacob? It was 10 years ago it was put on?
Yes, 2000. It was part of Save Our Homes. It was
Save Our Homes in 2008?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so 2008, it was put in. All it's done, the Save Our Homes was put a cap on how much it's going to increase every year. So when you get a large increase in the value of apartments like we've seen since the downturn, it taps down the rate that it can increase, that the value for the property tax assessor's office can increase on an annual basis. That's all it's doing. It's not saying don't pay taxes, not a tax, go away. It's just capping so you don't have these wild fluctuations of tax consequence.
And on that note, before this went in place back in 2006, 2007, 3 out of every 10 properties statewide had a 70% increase in property value. That can be catastrophic for small businesses. That can absolutely force you to have to relocate. And from 2001 to about 2006, aggregate across the state, 116% increase in assessed value.
So Jacob, let me ask you a question, because when voters go to the polls, the amendments are always so confusing, and how they're worded is confusing.
Yeah, people are going to confuse the two property taxes.
Sometimes it's good to say yes. Sometimes it's good to say no. How is this amendment going to be worded?
All right, so this amendment is worded. Basically, all it says is that we're taking the existing law and the existing tax cap, and a vote yes makes it permanent. There's an exception in there for any taxes levied towards school boards or school district taxes. Those ones are completely unaffected by Amendment 2. Those would still be taxed at the just value. That is actually a line in the amendment, but it's only 65 words long. So we're taking the existing language and the existing cap, and we're just changing the sunset from 10 years to January 1st, 2019 to making it permanent. It is very simple, it's very short, and it is a single issue amendment.
So those people who are promoting this amendment, are they looking for a tax windfall for other services? I mean, what is their justification?
I mean, as far as people who are opposing,
it's yes. The person that put this together are people that want to have this.
So that was my next question. Who is it that put this amendment together on the ballot?
This came together from a broad coalition, from the building owners and manufacturers to the apartment associations to the Florida Realtors. It was a massive coalition to get this passed back in 2007, to get this back on the ballot. It passed with unanimous support in the Senate and with only 2 dissenting votes in the Florida House of Representatives. It is a broadly bipartisan amendment. It is very hard to oppose this because it is simply a measure for stability. It's, as mentioned before, we're not cutting taxes at all. We're simply saying you can only increase it at a rate that a business can plan on year to year. You can plan on a 10% increase. It'll still hurt, but you can plan on it.
And so if it doesn't pass, it just sunsets, right?
If it doesn't pass, it just sunsets, then the savings immediately hit, and then there is no regulation on how much the property values
can increase
or decrease.
Yeah. So you are much more up on this than I. The only objection I've heard to Amendment 2 from folks, and I've had arguments with them about it, is the corporations in the state don't pay enough taxes. And I'm not going to vote for this because the corporations should pay their fair share. Of course, my rebuttal to that is that's absurd, because the apartment owners, which are 61% of
the savings, yes.
Of the savings, yeah. So they're just going to pass that through. They're not going to pay 1 penny more. The people who are going to pay more for this are people that are living in apartments. So wake up, apartment people. You got a big bill coming your way. The other thing is commercial is the next largest chunk. And those retailers primarily, a lot of retailers, car dealers, CVS, grocery stores, those people are not going to eat that. Nobody's going to eat this except for the consumer. So to say that businesses are not paying their fair share is ridiculous, because what's going to end up happening is this gets passed on to consumer. Besides that really absurd objection, what other objections have you heard, and how do you rebut those?
So the main two I've heard are, the first one is that the legislature needs to do their job. This should not be on the ballot. There shouldn't be any amendments. It should just be passed through law, through statute, which is easily rebutted because anything dealing with ad valorem taxes has to be on.
Well, the legislator needs to do their job. Like, I don't understand.
They would basically
instead of passing it on to the voters on an amendment,
yes.
they say, well, the state should legislate.
But as for the Florida Constitution, it has to go on the amendments, and they did their job. 97% of the House, as I said, and 40% of the Senate voted for this.
So Democrats and Republicans are both on the same page.
Same page for Amendment 2. It's the least controversial, happy little amendment on there that is so critical to the way of life in Florida, to keep it inviting for businesses, to keep it inviting to young professionals, and just to keep this as the go-to state. We became the third largest state in the union in 2015. Affordable housing is a massive part of that. It's an affordable place to do business and an affordable place for your workers to live. That is vital to our economy, as well as bringing in all those out-of-state dollars for vacation homes, vacation rentals, hotels. The entire tourism industry is dependent on this as well.
I know it's hard to pick a number, but is there any number you've come across that talks about the number of properties that might be affected?
So as of right now, in 2017, the numbers we have, 2.2 million properties across the state are affected by the cap already. And that's projected to increase year by year as property values continue to increase.
Okay, so let's get back to the objections. You named the one objection is that the state should be legislating it.
Which is completely false, because they did their job. They got it on the ballot for us to vote on. The other,
they did what they're supposed to do.
The other is that this is just a tax cut for the wealthier. This is just going to cost local governments money, which again is completely false, because all this does, each local government with Amendment 2 will continue to take in more money each year than the previous year as long as property values rise. The idea behind this is that from one year to the next, you're not going to have a critical, you're not going to have to fire anybody. You're not going to have to raise your prices out of nowhere. You're not going to have a detriment to your own business to keep it going. And as an added benefit to that, let's say that properties go up 40% one year, 20% the next year, and then they take a 20% downturn. Even if those property values go down, with that 10%, the local government is still going to be taking in more money until those equalize. So it adds more stability past the market for the local governments.
Sure.
So the fact that it harms them, Amendment 2 does not at all.
Yeah, it just stabilizes that increase in ad valorem taxes. That's it.
So are you able to talk about what kind of sentiments are you hearing? Do you think it's something that the general public will get behind? Are there polls or anything else that?
As far as my personal experiences, there's not been a person who I've talked to who, once I actually explained and talked it through them, doesn't see the benefit of this. It is some people you have to connect the dots for, for instance, renters, people who've never actually seen a property tax bill, and explain that. Do you really think that your landlord, who most people tend to have problems with their landlords for one reason or another, is really going to pay that bill for you? Do you think it's going to get passed on to you? It's about connecting the dots for that. Or the gas station on the corner, whenever we have that gas spike, do you really think that the gas prices are going to stay cheap if they have to pay more in taxes? It's just connecting the dots for some people. Yeah. And once that's connected, it's really, there's nothing bad in this amendment. It is a very, like I said, a happy little amendment that just keeps things nice and stable for the state of Florida.
Yeah, so your challenge is education. You really have to get out and try and explain that.
And fighting through both misinformation and a half picture, to where if there's only a little bit of the picture, say this gives a corporation a tax cut. Well, yes, it doesn't really do that. It helps keep things stable, but they're not getting a cut. Nobody's getting a tax cut with Amendment 2.
Yeah, it makes no sense, man. It's like cheering for the cost of goods, cheering for the gasoline price to go up because the gas station owner is going to absorb that increase in cost. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, and once you connect the dots for people, almost everybody gets on board with it.
That's actually a great example that Eric just gave. Like, I mean, there's nothing like gas where the price changes on a daily basis. I mean, the cost gets passed right along.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
What's the cost of doing business? It's a cost of goods sold for an apartment or a landlord who owns a retail plaza. The taxes are one of, if not the largest line item that they're going to have every single year. And it's their cost of goods sold. That's all it is. So these are pass-throughs. It's not an issue of the corporations paying more because they pass this through to their tenants, to their consumers, whoever else clients that are coming into the store. It's the way it works. So you guys, you guys are living in apartments. You guys got to wake up, man. I mean, I don't know how many apartment, tenants that we've got listening to the program, but certainly going to affect you. And I haven't spoken to any landlords that are excited about this. I don't think anybody that's in the business of leasing to people or leasing from people are excited about this. So vote yes.
And on the note of the amount of apartments, as far as renters, I don't have that exact specific number, but I do know there are about 350,000 apartment units in the Tampa Bay area of Hillsborough and Pinellas County combined. To where almost all of those units, they either students or working families or people who have multiple people in the same unit just trying to get by. To where if you keep raising the cost of living for them, it's going to add more money to them on their gas commute while at the same time raising the cost of gas, forcing them to move out. Less places will be hiring. You're going to get cuts at some of these places that restaurants can't afford as many employees. The businesses just can't afford it if you have to pay these taxes. To where and again, this will not make taxes go down until the market demands that they go down. This purely means that you're not going to have to fire 5 people at the end of the year because all of a sudden you can't afford them. It is paramount to the hundreds of thousands of renters we have in the area and statewide to make sure this stays in place. Myself as one of them, I am desperate to make sure we get this passed.
well, you guys who are out there, just make sure whatever you learned today, that you spread it, because education's the key in this. It's going to be really confusing in the ballot with.
Yeah. The biggest thing we can ask is that you just tell people about this. The education, it takes 30 seconds to explain this to somebody, 5 minutes if you want to get in depth to see how it affects them personally. And because there's a lot of angry people out there this election, there's a lot of controversy about various amendments. It's important to try to cut through that noise. I've annoyed every person I've talked to for the past better part of a year about this amendment, from my servers to my friends. It is incredibly important to just educate and spread the word.
Great. Jacob, thank you so much for coming in and seeing us today. Important information for the voters of the state of Florida.
Jacob, see you on election day. I hope it all goes well.
Same here.
And that was Jacob Gill talking about Amendment 2. Stephen, thoughts?
Well, first of all, just before I give my thoughts, if anybody has or need of any information or wants to speak to Jacob, you can contact him. His email address is jacob@everybodyisfor2.com. That's numeral 2. jacob@everybodyisfor2.com.
And that's the same as the website too. So you go ahead and just read him the website. Everybodyisfor2.com. Everybodyisfor2.com. So anyway, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So Eric, it was fascinating to me because this morning's newspaper, what they said is just, there's so many amendments, just vote no on all the amendments. Everything's wrong. We don't need them. And there's a real danger that this will get swept. Amendment 2 will be swept up in that current. People have to get educated to recognize how dangerous it is.
Yeah. And again, just want to reiterate, so many folks say the legislature needs to do their job. And Jacob, talked about that. And you can't do that with ad valorem property taxes. It has to come before the voters. So the legislators are doing what they're supposed to do. And I don't know what else to say to you guys. But you got to rally around this. We got to make sure that it gets passed. This is really not about any kind of corporate welfare. This is a pass-through tax. It's a cost of doing business for landlords, and they pass it on to their tenants. The biggest ones that are going to get hit are the apartment dwellers, folks that live in apartments, the ones that can least afford to pay the price. So,
you know, Eric, a simple way to just explain that that people can use to tell other people is go to the gas pump. If gas goes up on one day, you're going to see it right there on the pump. And that's what's going to happen. If property taxes go up, you're going to see rents go up right away as well.
Yep, no doubt. Well, as always, Jacob was a great guest. Stephen, where can folks get information on other guests that are terrific?
Well, the one and the only place to go is www.investfloridashow.com. We have our archive of prior guests and information, and also listen on your mobile device while you're in the gym or in the car.
Guys, as always, we appreciate the time that you invest with us each and every episode. And until next time, hasta la vista.
You've just listened to the Invest Florida podcast with Eric Odom and Steven Silverman. Join us every week for actionable real estate investment ideas, and of course, visit our website at www.investfloridashow.com for more shows and tips on how to earn a cash flow in the real estate market in Florida. While hosts and producers of the Invest Florida show have no reason to doubt the validity of comments of our guests, we do not warranty their accuracy. Please check with your legal, financial, and tax advisors before entering into any investment. Returns will vary from person to person and deal to deal based on unique circumstances. All information expressed in this show is for educational purposes only. Opinions of the guests are not necessarily shared by the hosts and producers of the Invest Florida show.